Hello, boys and girls. It's Mrs. Willoughby. I'm here to do a little drawing lesson with you today. We are going to be drawing this baby Yoda. I picked this project for today. I thought some of you would think it was fun. Baby Yoda's pretty cute, pretty popular. But another reason is we're going to be doing this drawing just using our lines we've been practicing, and we're going to be working on some symmetry. So symmetry means that if you draw a line through something, if it's a line of symmetry, that means that what's on one side of the line is basically a mirror image of what's on the other side of the line. So for instance, faces, butterflies, things like that, they have symmetry. Some things have more than one line of symmetry. We'll talk about that later. This baby Yoda, though, he just has this one line of symmetry. And if you look, there is two exceptions. His coat right here is a little off center, so that is one thing that isn't completely symmetrical. And then also this horizon line back here is not symmetrical. But if you look at the rest of him, this ear matches this ear. These eyebrows lines match these, the eyes match, everything is just a mirror image cut in half. So how are we going to accomplish that? Well, we're going to start, since we know that there is symmetry, we are actually going to draw a line down the center of our paper to split it in half. That way, whatever we draw in one half, we know we're going to draw the same thing on the other half. So you can, of course, use a ruler to mark your paper and draw these lines. Another way that you can do it, if you don't have a ruler handy, I can actually take my paper and just make a light fold, then unfold that, and that line is now visible to me. So I'm actually going to take my pencil and I'm going to very lightly trace down this line of symmetry. And this is going to help me while I'm drawing to keep each side being a mirror image of the others. And we will erase this line eventually. And I know you can't really, it's really light. That's why it's so hard to see. Okay. I am also, so if you look at our Yoda, you can see that he's split in half about down here, but we've got more room at the top. I'm actually going to mark a line right here where his chin is going to hit, and that's going to be about halfway down too. So I'm going to fold my paper the other way, make just a light crease, unfold, and then again I'm going to very lightly draw a line there. So now my paper is basically split into quarters. Each piece is 1/4 of the paper. All right, so we are going to start with Baby Yoda's head. So if you look, you can see that this line right here just has a little bit of a curve to it, right? So I'm going to use some dots to help me mark where these lines are going to be. So I know that the center of the chin is actually going to hit right here in the very middle of my paper. So I'm going to put a light dot right there. Again, this is something we will be erasing later, so we don't want to make it too dark. And then if I look at the top of his head, I can see about how much space there is on the paper. I'm just going to make a little dot right there to mark where the top of his head is going to be. So you can see those light dots, okay? We can see that it comes down and there's almost a little point right here, and then it goes down. So I want to make that little point, and I want to make one on each side so that they're going to match. That's going to help with that symmetry. So I'm going to go over about right here, because I want to leave plenty of room for his ears also. Those ears are pretty wide. And then on the other side, I'm going to make a dot that is a mirror image. Okay, so for his head right now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different dots. So now it's kind of like connecting the dot. I can see that his head, the top of it, is almost a circle, but then it kind of comes down here a little more straight. So when I connect these dots, the top to be more of a circle, and then right here I want to go up a little more straight, but then it's going to join up with that circle. So I've got something like that. And honestly, looking at this, I think that maybe I need to move my dots over just a little bit. So it just didn't look quite wide enough to me. So let's try this again. Then go up into more of a circle. I can draw more than one line because then I can go right back in there and erase those extra lines. So that looks a little more like what I was trying to do. And then I'm going to draw, I'm trying to match this line over here. There we go. So when we're done, those two sides should look pretty similar. So I'm actually going to go over these lines now with a darker line so that you can see. So I started at the top dot and I drew this line down to that bottom dot. Erase any stray marks there. And then I did the exact same thing over here. So we're just trying to match that shape on both sides, and I think that looks pretty symmetrical. So I can erase that little top dot now too. All right, so I know that the center dot right here is where his chin is going to hit. And this line is just going to very gradually go up. And it's going to end up meeting up with the bottom of our line here. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. It's just gradually going up. It's not a real drastic, okay? And then I'm just going to kind of round these corners off a little better. I don't want that point there when they meet. You can see it's more of a rounded line. And then I can go in and erase those extra lines. All right, so we've got our Baby Yoda head drawn. So the next thing that I want to work on is I want to work on the ears. So I'm going to look at these ears, okay? I'm going to do some more dots. I want to put a dot where the bottom of the ear is going to meet the head. I want to do a dot where the top of the ear is going to meet the head. And then right here, this is more the top of the ear that's folded over. So I'm going to do a dot where that line is going to be. And I'm going to be trying to make sure that those dots on each side match up with each other, that they're about the same height. I mean, if you wanted to get really technical on this, you could even use a ruler to measure. We're just going more with eyeing this and just trying to make it as symmetrical as possible. So when I look, actually when I look at this, I think he looks a little more rounded at the top there than what I've got. It's hard sometimes not to be a perfectionist, I guess. You want it to match up. Let's just go with what we have. We don't want to keep changing it, so it's okay. So I can see the top of his ear meets up, I'm gonna say about right here on our Yoda. So I'm gonna make a little dot there. And then I can see that it goes down just a little bit, a little over a centimeter maybe, to where that green top of the ear is going to be. And then the bottom of his ear looks to me like it matches up right down here where that is starting to curve. So you can see those dots. So the last dot that I want to make for this ear is I want to make the tip of the ear. So if I look at my picture, I can see the tip of the ear is actually just a little bit higher than where it meets on the head. Again, it's not a drastic diagonal, but it is kind of gradually going up there. And I can see that there's, you know, not too much of the paper left on the side. So I'm going to turn my paper so I have a good view of it. And I know if I drew a straight line across, it's going to hit about right there. So I want to go just a little bit higher than that. And I'm going to mark my dot for the top of the ear. Okay, and I did make a mark there so I could see where that line was. I'm just going to erase that. All right, so now my goal is going to be to match these dots up on the other side. So I'm going to hold it up so that you can see we've got a dot here, here, tip of the ear, and then right down here at the bottom of the ear. Okay, so I want to try to match those dots on the other side. So I'm just, again, if I'm looking at the paper straight on, it's a little easier for me to kind of tell the distance. So it looks like this dot, those look to be pretty symmetrical to me. Then I'm going to do this dot here. And then a dot over here. Okay, and those look to me, if I hold my finger on them and look at them across, they look to be pretty symmetrical. Except maybe not this bottom one. I might want to move that one up just a little bit. All right, so we've got our dots there. Now we need the dot for the tip of the ear. So if I kind of follow my pencil across here, it looks like that dot, I'm going to put about right there. Okay, so again, to me that looks pretty symmetrical. So now that we've got all the dots for our ears, we're going to connect those dots. Okay, so maybe you never realized it when you were doing connect the dots, but that's doing some line drawing. So first I'm going to connect this line, and I know it's kind of gradually going up. Again, if you have stray lines, you can just erase those. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the line on this side, because before I get too far, I want to make sure that it still looks symmetrical to me. So to me, that looks pretty symmetrical. Okay, kind of like little antennas coming out there. All right. For the bottom of the ear, we're actually, if you look at this, we're slightly going to go down and then into a circle and curve up. So I'm going to slightly go down. But then I'm going to bring that line to match up a little bit more. All right. Then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to come down a little bit. But then that is going to curve up. I almost feel like maybe it needs to be a little longer there. It just seems kind of, his ears seem a little bit too short. So there we go. So I like that. I'm going to erase these lines. I can erase the dots. Okay. I'm going to kind of round this corner off. This one I got a little more rounded. It looks a little better. And I can go in and erase these other dots that I don't need anymore. And when you erase the dots, you can just go back in. And just go back over those lines. We're going to be coloring this. I used colored pencil for this one. Obviously, you can use crayons, markers, whatever it is that you have at home that you can use. All right, so next thing, we're going to draw the top of the ear here. So if you look at that, you can see we're going to wave up a little bit and then down and then back up. So this is just a nice curve down, curve up line. So I'm going to turn my paper. Curve down just a little, and then I'm going to curve right back up into that corner. So curve down, and then up. So same thing over here. I'm going to curve down. And then I'm going to curve right back up into that point. And now I can erase those lines, or those dots, I'm sorry. All right, so I do want to go over this a little darker with my pencil now so that you can see it better while I'm working on the rest of it. So my ear went up, curved, comes down, goes up into the head. So it goes up, curves down, rounded at the bottom, and then up into the head. And then this line curves down and then curves up, a nice little wave, down, and then up. All right, so we've got our head, we've got our ears. Okay, let's go ahead and do the body. We're going to save the eyes for last. The eyes, as you know, drawing anything, the eyes are always the hardest. And it's really important to try to get them as symmetrical as possible to make this look the way that you want it to look. So, first thing we're going to draw, as far as his clothes, is going to be the top of this robe. Okay, so the robe is actually going to come out of this point right here where his ear meets his face. And it's just going to come out kind of rounded. And then I want to try to match that line on the other side. Okay. I am going to do this. Well, then we're going to go, I told you that the top of his cloak is a little off center. It's not, you know, if it was centered, it'd be right here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that. And it has kind of a curve to it also. Okay. In doing that, this line actually needs to be a little bit shorter than that line because of the way his cloak lays. So I'm going to start about here with a slight curve to the bottom and hook right up to that collar. And then the collar on this side is going to do the same, only it's a little bit longer. That's the way that the cloak is made. So I can see this dot right here I want to get rid of too. Okay, so we've got the cloak. Next, I'm going to do the bottom of the cloak. We're going to do the arms last. So I want to make this symmetrical. So I'm going to, that looks pretty good. I've got my little dots there. It is going to go out all the way to where the sleeve is. And I want that to be not quite at the bottom. So I'm going to make a little dot there. Here I'm going to follow that down again. And again, not quite at the bottom. So if you can see those dots down there, I'm going to draw a line from dot to dot now with a curve to it. So curved line, curved line. Then I can erase those dots. Okay, now the middle of the cloak is almost going to touch the bottom. So I'm going to start almost at the bottom. And I'm going to very slightly curve up to the bottom of the cloak. Same thing on this side. Okay, so I'm going to go back over these lines then and make them a little darker. So what we did, we drew a line down, a line down, a line down. Then we rounded the corner and curved up just a little bit, rounded the corner, curved up just a little bit. Then we did one side of the bottom of the cloak, the other side of the bottom of the cloak, and then again the bottom of the cloak almost touches the bottom in the middle, but it goes up just a little bit there on the sides. All right. So we're doing so far so good. So our baby Yoda needs some arms, of course. So we're going to start right here at the edge of the cloak and just draw, that went out a little too much. Draw a slightly curved line on both sides that match. Remember though, the cloaks are a little different, so you're trying to match where the line ends. I just keep going wide on those lines. All right, so when I look at those now, this one looks a lot skinnier than this one. That's part of being symmetrical, is you want to check things like that. So I'm going to start that line out just a little farther, and now they look better. Okay, I'm going to do a curved line in. This is like right before the cuff. So for the cuff, I'm going to flare out and then just come in. So flare out and bring that line back in. You can see these two lines parallel one another. All right, the hand, I'm going to start about right here. And we're just going to curve into the bottom of the sleeve. So it's almost like a circle where a lot of the circle is hidden. Okay, and then we're going to mark, I guess Baby Yoda has thumbs. I'm not sure, but that's where his, I guess, thumbs would be. All right, a couple lines in the cloak. We're going to do a long line and then a shorter line just to kind of show some of the texture of the robe. Okay, and now that I have all this bottom part completed, I can actually erase this really light line that I started with because I'm done down there. So that cleans it up a little bit. Okay, the face, the hardest part, right? We saved the hardest for last. We're gonna start with the eyes. And in order to do the eyes, we're gonna stick to our dots. So if you look at Yoda's eyes, you can see that the bottom of his eyes are actually not that far from the bottom of his chin. You can see there's a line here and it curves and comes back up. So we want to make the dots for the corners of his eyes first. So I'm going to make a dot right here. And then right on the other side. So you can see that light line I've got drawn there. So I did a dot kind of close on either side. Now when I look, I can see that dot is actually just a tiny bit higher than this dot over here. So I want to make another dot just a little bit lower, close to the edge of his face. All right, so he's got those 4 dots across his face. Now, the highest part of his eye is basically almost in the middle of it, right? But not quite in the middle, a little more towards his ears. So I want to mark that highest spot. And if I look, I can see it's just a little bit below where that ear part is. So if I follow across there, I can make a dot there. You can see it's like a triangle right now. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing over here, trying to make these as symmetrical as possible. All right, so that's what we've got. It's like 2 triangles. All right, so the bottom line is mostly straight, but it does go up towards the corners. Then as it gets to the bottom, it's mostly straight. So it's going to come down in the corners a little bit. But then they're going to meet up and be mostly straight across the bottom. All right, you want to check for symmetry and adjust your lines if you need to. All right, now we're going to start at the tallest part of the eye. And we're going to come down. It almost looks kind of like a fish's head the way we're coming down. To meet up with that corner. And then this is going to be much more rounded. All right, so I'm going to look at my eyes and see what kind of adjustments I need to make. It looks like my right eye is just a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to go right outside those lines. So as you can see, when you're drawing something that is symmetrical, it's a little more challenging because you really have to be stopping and checking all the time to see how is one side a little bit different than the other, what adjustments do I need to make. But I think we got his eyes pretty good there. Okay. So of course I can erase my dots. Go back over my lines. And we are getting so close. All right. So now we need to make a little curved line here where the corners of his eyes are. So you can see I made this little curved line right there. So I'm going to darken the eyes a little bit so that you can see them better. Remember, you should be drawing lightly until you know you're happy with it. Okay, so you can see a little better the corner of that eye. Okay, circles, one of the hardest parts, right? We want to do these black circles in his eyes. We can see there's more left over on this side than this side, but they're pretty close to the top here. So I'm going to start kind of at the top. Drawing very lightly because circles, we often have to go back in. I hope I'm not blocking you guys while I'm doing this. We often have to go back and fix circles because it's hard to draw them really well the first time. All right, so we've got our first circle and we want to draw one to match on the other side. So again, I'm just working on trying to get a nice circle. And I want it to be symmetrical to this circle, right? So let's look at those. Look pretty good. All right. There are our circles. All right, we're getting close, guys. So, last thing we want to do with the eyes is he has these two little dots here where the light is hitting his eyes. This is more of a cartoonish way to draw eyes. So, let's gonna be right here on the edge of his eye. And again, we're trying to make those symmetrical. And we're gonna erase that line right out of the center part. Okay. Straighten up my circle a little bit. All right. Eyes are done. Last thing we have is the lines for the face and then the background. So the lines for the face are pretty easy. We have a line up here. Remember, we're trying to keep those symmetrical. Then he has this first line, which you can mark with dots again to help you. Okay, and then he's got a line over top of that one that kind of parallels it. And he's got a cute little nose. And then I actually posted this on my Facebook, and one of my old teachers, Mr. Voris, told me I should make him a happy Yoda. So this one I was just following someone else's drawing, and I did the sad face. So for this one, I'm gonna try to turn that frown upside down and do a happy Yoda. And I do like the happy Yoda better. All right, so last thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna color this guy. So you can use crayons, markers, you could even paint him if you have those. As you can see, I used colored pencil. I wanted to use some, oh, wait, we forgot to do just these curvy lines in the background where the horizon line is. So one suggestion I would have, whether you're using crayons or colored pencils, one effect that I like to do with the colored pencils is that I started with the green part. So I actually used a dark green colored pencil, and I outlined all my pencil lines with that. And then after I would outline it, I would go back in with a lighter green, more of a lime green. Kind of color around the edges first. Just kind of fill that in. And then I just do nice back and forth lines. But coloring around those edges first kind of helps me to stay in the lines. For the ears, I used a regular brown. I did still outline it. But then when I colored this in, I wanted it to be more of a tan. So I used just a very light stroke, because I really didn't want a ton of color here up in the ears. So that makes it more of like a nice tan color. I used the dark green outline with the light green on the face. I did also use the dark green to go over the lines on the face. There we go.
his nose and his mouth. I also traced around the eyes and around the head. And then I did use that lighter green again to color him in. So again, going kind of around the sides first, filling them in. And then once I get my sides filled in, then I do a nice side to side coloring in. Okay. For the eyes, I used the brown again. For the kind of outside circles, so I'm going to trace around the inside of the eye. Coloring this way is just more of kind of an illustrative or a cartoon way to color. So I made this brown darker though. So when I colored, I'm actually pushing a little bit harder, and I'm wanting that color to show up, a lot more brown than what it did for the ear. So same colored pencil. I just keep checking to see if I'm blocking. So same colored pencil, just as it was here and here, just a different effect. And the last part of the eye, you're actually going to use the black. So again, I'm going to trace this inside part here with the black. And I want it to show up, pretty dark. Coloring in, going around the edges. And really filling that eye in. And then I'm going to use a really light stroke of the black right here in the corner. All right. For the coat, I used the same strategy as I did for the eye. So I wanted it to be a little darker. For the hands, I used the same strategy as the ears and the face. And then for the background, I did a light blue background. And then I had this weird kind of brown violet that I used here. You could also use a different color brown. You could use black. You could draw more things in the background. So, but once you get done with your coloring, it's going to go from this, although he's happier, to this. So, all right, that was a little longer lesson than what I usually do. If you had to split it up in a couple of times, that's fine. I will see you guys next week with another video.